Hello, my name is Rick, and this is episode 1 of my tutorials for trading in Dwarf Fortress. In this video I will talk about how trading works in the game, and what I see as a logical approach to using it. By paying just slightly more attention to it, you can have more stuff to trade with the merchants sooner. I'll talk about what effects more trade has, namely more migrants, earlier threats, and bigger sieges. I will illustrate my points using two forts, the Fortress of Swamp Cavern, and also this one, the Dwarven Fortress of Trade Fortress. I'll talk about how the test fort demonstrates my trading ideas well, and where it went horribly wrong. I ran my ideas by the Dwarf Fortress forum and got some feedback and suggestions, so if this isn't the most comprehensive series of videos on trading in Dwarf Fortress, please point me to the one that is, so I can learn from it. Very often in the fortress's first year, the dwarf traders will arrive, and a lot of people don't really have anything to give them. I'm going to demonstrate that with a little focus on trading, without ignoring the other aspects of the game, it's not hard to make more to trade several times on the merchant's very first visit, but it's also possible to have enough trade goods for all the merchants throughout the year. It's a challenge, but it's a fun one. In future videos in this series, I'll show how I set up my embark, and show step by step how to produce more goods for trade faster and more efficiently. This video is going to be about the main points of my theory on how to trade. In future videos, I'll go much more into the details and the hows and whys. This video is more about the general idea. I'm keeping it short because I think people learn best in small short bursts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any. The main idea is this. It's not hard to make more things to trade with the caravans just by focusing your dwarves on it a little more. I start on the very embark screen, giving dwarves levels and skills for trading, stone crafting, gem cutting and setting. Then I continue this idea with multiple crafting workshops, wheelbarrows, connected stone stockpiles, and a bunch of dwarves whose only job is hauling things. I've been using gem-encrusted stone and metal trade goods as my industry of choice, but you could pick any industry in the game and make it work. Food and farming is a particularly easy one because of the high trade value of food. I start by deliberately making a trader, a leader, a bookkeeper, and a manager at Embark, and I make sure these are all different dwarves. When the caravans from other nations stop by, they always want to talk to the leader, so if your trader and leader are the same person, they always go to talk first before they will trade. This cuts into the total amount of time you have to trade. Here's how trading works in Dwarf Fortress, according to the wiki, and what I've seen backs it up. When you make a trade, your trader gains some skill, and that XP is split between one of 6 skills related to trading. It doesn't matter if the trade is large or small. So you can train a trader up more by making many small trades rather than one large one. At the start of the fort, I do this on purpose. Later, when I have a skilled trader, I don't worry about it. The first time you open the trade screen, the dwarf trading at the time will get a bunch of skill. This won't necessarily get them levels in appraisal enough to let them know how much things cost the very first time. It appears to work the same as normal trading XP, getting split between Judge of Intent, Appraisal, and 4 others. I suspect that large amount of XP is split just the same way, because after watching videos by Civilian and Denocrium, it's clear that this alone does not reliably get you a trader who knows the value of items at the very start of the game. If you want to reliably know, just put a few points into the appraisal skill at the embark list. You only have to be novice or higher to see the value of items. Having one trader who can do this reliably, right away, helps my trading strategy. If you're new to Dwarf Fortress, and getting food and drink is important to you, having a trader like this will help you not overpay for the things that you need. If you're a more experienced player, trying to deliberately overpay so that the merchants bring more and more, having this will help know how much you're overpaying by. When I start a new fort, I set up a carpenter's shop on the surface, maybe a butcher's if my guys kill something large early on. In this case, I set up a fishery workshop. I set up a farm first, then on to bedrooms and workshops. I set up a bookkeeper's office right away and set them to the most possible accuracy. I don't know that this helps anything. In fact, it probably doesn't. I guess I kind of do it for role-playing reasons. I feel if my own guys know how much their stuff is worth, they can brag about it better to the merchants. I set up crafting workshops linked to large piles of stone that are said to have many wheelbarrows, so that many dwarves can carry stone to them as quickly as possible. In this case, I have a stockpile for marble, because it's more valuable as a base material for trade goods. I usually have both steel and gem-encrusted trade goods my first year in a fort. In this test fort, I found coal and iron early on. We dug in and found some caves and sealed them off from our fort. We got the first two waves of migrants and then ran into a problem. The regular stream of migrants stopped coming, so the fort maxed out with a population of 20 adults. Even though this fort was meant to demonstrate trading, I didn't make the world easy, choosing to settle within reach of goblins. I dug the fort into the ground, but then built a tavern on the surface to act as its front entrance. This was one of my most efficiently run forts ever, in terms of not having many idlers at one time, but having only 20 people made that easy. Here is a short walkthrough of the trade fort and the features that made it a good example of my trading theory. For one thing, it's meant to be secure even in a hostile world. It has doors that can be shut, bridges that can be closed. The front entrance goes down a little ways so that tree roots are never a problem. There's a trading depot right by the stairs, so our guys don't have to carry too much stuff too far. The farming area was one of the first things built in the fort. The fort is extremely efficient in that the bedrooms and offices are right next to the workshops. They're just one layer away. The trade fort has a compact and efficient kitchen and still operation going, right next to a meeting area and a place for to stockpile all the end result of it, namely the food and the booze. We found gems, and I had gem workshops set up by the end of year one. So we had gem encrusted trade goods the very first time we traded for anything. I tried setting up a situation where they would cut gems on one workshop and encrust them at the other so that we could do both at once and be more efficient that way. It kind of worked. Occasionally they would stumble over each other where both dwarves would try to use the same bin at the same time, which would happen when the one cutting gems would want to put it in the cut stockpile and the one encrusting gems would want to use that exact same bin. Not a huge problem, but it would happen. In order to make both rock pots and trade goods at the same time, I had a couple of crafters' workshops set up. As you can see, there's a lot of wheelbarrows available for the stone stockpiles, so that multiple dwarves can stock them at the same time. The trade fort had gone so far as to build a forging area and build a few ceremonial weapons, which in a few seconds are going to turn out to be not as ceremonial as we would have liked. This fort was fortunate in that it found marble very early on in its existence, so a lot of the trade goods we made were made out of marble, which makes them intrinsically more valuable. One of the several problems the trade fort had was it ran into caves much sooner than we would have liked, and also directly below the staircase, a good example, causing us to have to redirect around our staircase in order to further explore down into the world. And then it happened again. Very carefully, our miners built some downstairs so that we could peer through the magma, and we found some shiny blue stones, which isn't going to make any difference at all, because this trade fort isn't going to work for demonstration purposes beyond what I've just shown you. Here's what made Swamp Cavern a good example of a trade fort. For one thing, it's extremely valuable, and we've done a lot of trading here. For instance, we've traded the elves a grand total over the years of nearly 7 million dwarf bucks. And why, you might ask, would we have traded the elves such a large amount of money? It's because they brought us giant tigers, and we wanted them to bring more. Currently, Swamp Cavern is a large fort with towers over it and a huge tavern, and it extends deep into the earth. But when it first got started, Swamp Cavern was a simple front entrance, just dug into the dirt, leading to a staircase, and then from there to a farm. When Swamp Cavern was new, it was just a hallway through dirt, a few bedrooms for the leaders, a kitchen, a farm, and then the masonry and crafting workshop area. To produce all the rock pots and trade goods and other things Swamp Cavern would need all simultaneously, we had several crafting workshops set up and linked to, once again, stockpiles, marble for trade goods or fancier items, gabbro for the stone blocks that everything in the fort is made out of. All the workshops are made out of gabbro stone blocks, for instance. So here's the thing, if you leave a trade goods item in the bin long enough and they encrust it over and over again, eventually it turns into a nearly artifact-like item in terms of value and descriptive detail. For instance, here we have a masterful large pyrite created by Sloth Spear. It is encrusted with exceptionally worked emerald cut black pyropes and many, many other things. And some of these things have been fashioned into images. For instance, an image of a native gold ring, which is an artifact ring, or the deity of mercy and forgiveness depicted as a male dwarf, which is particularly funny because this particular large pyrite has been used to kill something. This pyrite has a kill on it. One Crundle in Swamp Cavern, which the elite Marks dwarf was apparently carrying this pyrite in his hand when he happened upon a Crundle in the basement. So you get these really wonderful, nearly artifact-like items without even requiring a strange mood or anything like that. Swamp Cavern is an extremely hostile place. The world in which they exist is filled with goblins. I mean, Swamp Cavern is built almost around a ring of 6 goblin pits and started on the edge of a dragon's lair, almost. And because of that, we've built the trading depot deep underground with a series of tunnels that lead to it. And they've been paved to keep mushrooms from growing on them and blocking the way. But if anything hostile should ever come in this way, and it has, there's also a large bridge they can slam shut and a bunch of doors they can lock to protect themselves against that. And if that's not enough, there's even fortifications they can run into and fire at any hostile invaders that are, say, trying to topple the trade depot or something like that. By putting a little effort into trading, you will soon find that you can just buy out entire caravans. It's fast, but you end up with a lot of crap that way, some of it badly overpriced. There are some things I like to trade for, and others I'd rather have my guys make for themselves. Here's what I like to buy from merchants. Raw materials for things we want, such as animals for food. Anything that's too fussy to make, like musical instruments. Clothes for the humans that live in my fort. A few picks or weapons right away at the start of the game. Leather, tons and tons of leather. Large animal farms are a big drain on FPS in this game. I'd much rather the merchants bring me many bins of leather. Books, because they are fun. Paper to make into quires so that I don't have to set up a paper making industry. Bolts, because I have trouble keeping up with demand for them sometimes. Fun giant animals to keep as pets is probably my favorite thing to buy from the merchants. And yes, that means you have to stay friends with the elves. Here's what I do not like to buy from the merchants. Anything that you can make a nicer version of, especially weapons and armor. That goes double for the wood stuff the elves bring. Odd crap that would just clutter up the fort like strange cooking implements. Wood if I live in a place that has plenty of it. Barrels of venom or blood that have no current use in the game. Too many copies of the same book. Anything they are charging for that is way overpriced, such as super great barrels or amazing mittens, especially at the beginning of a fort. Later on, you might want to pay for silly things like that on purpose and overpay for them if you're trying to get a large siege to come to your fort. If you're trying to be efficient, no thanks. Why trade in Dwarf Fortress? For one thing, starting in an area where you can trade with dwarves, elves, and humans is as close to an easy mode as you get in this game that I can think of. If you're new to the game, the traders will bring you things you need badly, possibly food and drink. If you're good at the game, the traders can bring you things that you have trouble getting otherwise, such as leather, wood if you're in a place with no trees, iron if you're in a place with no good metal. They bring me things I'm too lazy to make myself, like complicated musical instruments, or clothes for all those pesky humans that live in my fort. There are other practical reasons to trade. It has a large effect on the game. If you consistently overpay by a lot, I'm talking twice as much or more, the traders will bring more and more stuff. Elves will bring up to about 3 times their starting amount, which still isn't much. Dwarves and humans will happily bring pages worth of clothes or food if you ask them to, far, far more than you probably want. Sometimes the elves will trade cool giant animals. I'm kind of partial to that. For the best possible chance of getting something good, you have to max out how much stuff they will bring. For this reason, I'm constantly overpaying the merchants, usually at least twice what I'm buying is worth, and often much more, especially from an established fort that can crank out trade goods faster than it can sell them. Trading in the game has a partial effect on migrants and sieges. The number of migrants that arrive are determined by fortress wealth, according to the wiki, and that wealth is measured by the latest outgoing dwarven caravan. More wealth, more migrants, and more trouble. Megabeasts are attracted by this wealth. You may find bigger and badder things showing up sooner in your fort if you are making it more expensive. And above all, sieges. In the fortress of Swamp Cavern, the fort was rather valuable for years, but never got very large sieges until they started trading a lot. I saw the same pattern in the long-lived fort I played before Swamp Cavern. Before I started making big trade deals, only puny sieges would arrive. After I made large trades, much bigger sieges would arrive, as many as 100 or more. So far as I've seen, over several forts and different versions of Dwarf Fortress, the size of sieges is directly linked to trading. If you like big sieges like I do, then this is the way to get them. However, they can cause problems if you're not ready for them. This trade fortress failed because goblin invaders kept traders and migrants from arriving. It couldn't be the trading tutorial I wanted because the population was too low and some of the traders never showed, including the dwarf caravan in later years. Luckily, this was just a test fort to see if the version of Dwarf Fortress I was trying is stable enough to make YouTube videos with. Good news, everyone. It seems to be. In the next video, I will talk about how to set up an embark for this increased trading idea, as well as some considerations for any embark. In future videos, I will demonstrate how to do this idea step by step with a whole new fort run by dwarves with viewer-submitted names. There are still spots open, so check out my video about joining one of my forts. I've made a lot of videos about the various sieges of Swamp Cavern. If you like videos where a goblin gets shot by a crossbow, or a dwarven fortress battles forgotten beasts, have I got some videos for you. I have a few other tutorials for Dwarf Fortress, namely how to catch and tame giant cave spiders, and others. Check out my channel's playlists or videos to find them. If you enjoyed this Dwarf Fortress content, please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks for watching.